There are couples who have shared a bed for 20 years, yet haven't truly seen each other in a decade. They eat at the same table, they share the same roof, they wear the same wedding bands, but between them there's nothing left. No tenderness, no shared secrets, none of that spark that brought them together in the beginning. All that remains is a routine, an arrangement, a silent agreement that says, we'll continue like this because it's easier than leaving. And the most terrible thing is that most of these couples don't even see the problem. They think it's normal, that it's what happens to everyone after a few years of marriage, that passionate love is for beginners, and that mature couples should settle for peaceful coexistence. They've accepted the death of their love, like accepting a change of seasons, inevitably. Without a fight, Padre Pio saw these couples. He saw them arriving at the confessional in San Giovanni Rotondo, in that small church in southern Italy where thousands of people would wait in line for hours to speak with him. Men and women who came to confess all sorts of sins, lies, anger, jealousy, lack of charity, but the sin they never confessed, the one they didn't even see as a sin, was this. They had killed the love in their marriage, and they continued to live as if nothing had happened, as if killing love was without consequence, as if God didn't see. What Padre Pio saw in these souls will send a chill down your spine, because he didn't just see the sins. With the supernatural gifts God had granted him, the stigmata, the gift of bilocation, the discernment of spirits, he saw the invisible spiritual consequences. He saw what God saw when he looked at these empty marriages. And what he saw was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Today, I'm going to reveal to you what Padre Pio saw in loveless marriages. Not the marriages where there is violence, not the marriages where there is blatant betrayal. No, the marriages where nothing happens anymore. The marriages where silence has replaced conversation, where routine has replaced passion, where indifference has replaced tenderness. Those marriages that everyone considers normal. If you are married, listen attentively to every word, because what you are about to hear could save your marriage. Or at the very least, open your eyes to what God sees when he looks at your couple. And believe me, what he sees is not what you imagine. One day, a man named Michael came to see Padre Pio in the confessional. He was a respectable man of 52, a good Catholic on the surface. He went to Mass every Sunday without fail. He prayed the rosary every night. He performed his devotions regularly. He gave to the collection. He helped at the parish, in everyone's eyes. Michael was a model of Christian virtue. But when he knelt before Padre Pio in the darkness of the confessional, something strange happened. Padre Pio didn't wait for him to speak. He didn't ask him his usual sins. He looked at him with those piercing eyes that saw beyond the visible, beyond appearances, beyond the masks that men wear. And he said something terrible to him. "My son, you come to confess your small sins. A moment of impatience here, a lie there, a lack of charity towards a colleague. But the greatest sin of your life, you don't even see it. It's so enormous that you can't even distinguish it. You have a wife at home, Jennifer, and you treat that woman like a piece of furniture. You don't look at her anymore. You don't really talk to her anymore. You don't touch her with tenderness anymore. Not out of malice, not out of cruelty, out of indifference. And that indifference, my son, is a sin more serious than you think. It's a sin that kills slowly, a silent sin, the devil's favorite sin." Michael was stunned. He wasn't expecting that at all. He thought his marriage had nothing to do with confession. After all, they didn't argue, they didn't cheat on each other, they didn't yell at each other. They simply coexisted peacefully, politely, like two courteous strangers who share the same apartment for convenience. "But Father, we never argue, We live in peace. Isn't that what God wants for a couple? Padre Pio shook his head with profound sadness, a sadness that came from everything he had seen in the invisible world. You confuse peace with death. A cemetery is also peaceful, very peaceful even, but that's not where God wants you to live. The silence of your marriage is not peace. It's the silence of a heart that has stopped beating. God didn't create marriage for two people to coexist in silence. He created it for two people to love each other, actively, deliberately. Every day, every morning, every evening, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult, because it's in the difficulty that true love is revealed. Padre Pio then revealed something to Michael that shook him to the bone. Something that Michael would never forget for the rest of his life. He told him what he saw spiritually when he looked at a loveless marriage, and what he saw was terrifying. When two people marry before God, a sacred bond forms between them, a bond invisible but as real as chains of steel. This bond is alive, it breathes, it nourishes itself, and what nourishes it is love, daily tenderness, gestures of affection, sweet words said for no particular reason, sacrifices made with joy, looks of gratitude, shared prayers. When love is alive and active, this bond shines with a golden light. It protects the couple. It protects the children. It protects the entire family. It keeps the demons at a distance. No force of evil can penetrate a home where this bond shines. But when love dies and only habit remains, this sacred bond begins to fade. It doesn't disappear immediately. The sacrament is still there, the grace is still available, but the bond weakens. It loses its light, it becomes dull, then grey, then almost invisible. And the demons see this weakness. They have eyes to see these things. They see a marriage where the divine protection has thinned, where the shield is cracked, and they begin to attack, not head-on, subtly, insidiously. Michael still didn't understand the gravity of what Padre Pio was telling him. But Father, we don't have any problems, no arguments, no temptations, no crises. Everything is calm in our home. Padre Pio looked at him with an intensity that made him tremble physically. That's exactly what the devil wants you to think, that everything is fine, that silence is normal, that indifference is acceptable, that a dead calm is a sign of good health. He's not attacking you with spectacular temptations because he doesn't need to. Why should he bother? You're already exactly where he wants you to be. In a marriage that's dead, but looks alive on the outside. This is his most subtle victory, the most complete. A couple who no longer loves each other, but believes everything is normal. A couple who goes to church on Sundays and returns home in silence. A couple who sleeps in the same bed, but lives in two different worlds. Padre Pio then shared with Michael a vision he'd had, a vision concerning loveless marriages that had deeply affected him. He had seen in one of his nocturnal visions a house where a couple lived. From the outside, the house seemed normal, clean, well-maintained, flowers in the windows, a freshly painted fence, the picture of a happy family. But when Padre Pio looked with his spiritual eyes, with that supernatural vision that God had granted him, he saw something else. He saw that the house was cold inside, not physically cold, spiritually cold, a glacial cold that came from the absence of love, a cold that seeped into the walls, into the floor, into the very air. And in that cold, shadows moved, dark, deformed presences that fed on the emptiness between the two spouses, that grew in the silence, that strengthened with each day without tenderness, with each night without shared prayer, with each meal without real conversation, with each avoided glance. Padre Pio said that these shadows weren't there by chance. They were attracted by the emptiness, like flies are attracted to decaying food. Love fills a marriage and leaves no room for the forces of evil. It's a wall of light that demons cannot penetrate. But when love withdraws, it leaves an empty space, and that space is immediately occupied by something else. Because the spiritual world does not tolerate emptiness, ever. Either the love of God fills your marriage, or the forces of darkness will fill it. There is no neutral ground. There is no spiritual no man's land. What Padre Pio revealed next is even more troubling, and it directly concerns the children who grow up in these homes. He told Michael that children who grow up in a loveless marriage suffer spiritual damage that no one talks about. Not psychological damage, although that exists too and is well documented. Spiritual damage, invisible but profound, because children absorb the spiritual atmosphere of their home like a sponge absorbs water. They have no filter. They have no defense. If that atmosphere is filled with love, with prayer, with tenderness between the parents, the children are protected, their souls are nourished, their faith grows naturally, like a plant in fertile soil. But if that atmosphere is cold, empty, dead, the children grow up with a spiritual hunger they can't name, a hunger that will pursue them throughout their lives, a hunger that will later drive them to seek love in the wrong places, in bad relationships, in addictions, in anything that can fill the void that their parents created through their mutual indifference. Michael began to understand the gravity of what Padre Pio was telling him. It wasn't just a couple's problem, it was a spiritual problem that affected his whole family, his children, and perhaps even future generations. Because a child who has never seen true love between their parents will find it difficult to love truly in turn. Padre Pio then asked him a question that changed his life. A simple but devastating question. Tell me, my son, when was the last time you looked at your wife, not glancing at her as she serves dinner, not seeing her out of the corner of your eye while she does housework, really looked at her in the eyes, with attention, with love, like you looked at her when you were young and in love? When did you say her name softly, just for the pleasure of saying it? When did you take her hand for no reason, simply because you wanted to feel her skin against yours? When did you do something only to make her happy, without her asking, without obligation? Michael remained silent for long minutes in the darkness of the confessional. He searched his memory, and he found nothing. It had been years, maybe 8 years, maybe 10. Years without a voluntary gesture of affection. Years without a deliberate tender word. Years of polite and empty coexistence. Years where they shared a roof, but no longer a life. Padre Pio gave him a very concrete piece of advice. Advice that seemed simple, but demanded enormous courage. Tonight when you go home, I want you to do something very simple but very difficult for a man who has forgotten how to love. I want you to look your wife in the eyes, and I want you to tell her these words. Jennifer, I'm sorry I stopped actively loving you, and I want to start again, today. Michael protested immediately. But Father, I don't even know if I love her anymore. The feelings are long gone. How can I say something I don't feel? That would be a lie. Padre Pio responded with a wisdom that came from decades of spiritual guidance and deep knowledge of the human heart. Love in marriage is not a feeling. Stop believing that love is a feeling. The world has lied to you. Novels have lied to you. Movies have lied to you. Love is a decision, a commitment, an act of will renewed each day. You no longer feel love because you have stopped practicing it. Not the other way around. You didn't stop practicing because you no longer felt it. You stopped feeling because you stopped practicing. Love is like a muscle. If you don't use it for years, it atrophies. It seems dead. But if you start exercising it again, stimulating it, forcing it to work, it will come back. Not immediately, not in a day, maybe not in a month, but it will come back, because the sacrament you received on your wedding day is still alive. The grace is still available. It's simply waiting for you to open the door, to take the first step, to say the first word. Michael went home that night with his heart pounding like a teenager. His palms were sweaty. He was afraid of being ridiculous, afraid of being rejected, afraid of breaking the comfort of silence. He watched his wife, Jennifer, silently preparing dinner, as she had every evening for years. She hadn't even heard him come in, and for the first time in ages, he really saw her. He saw the lines on her face, lines that weren't there when they married 30 years ago, the grey hair she tried to hide with cheap dye, her tired hands roughened by years of thankless housework, her back slightly stooped from fatigue. And he felt something he'd forgotten. Not passionate love, but compassion, gratitude, tenderness for this woman who had stayed by his side despite everything, despite the silence, despite the indifference, despite the empty years. He spoke the words Padre Pio had asked him to say. His voice trembled. Jennifer looked at him with surprise, then with suspicion, then with confusion. Then her eyes filled with tears, tears that had been waiting years to fall, because she too suffered from the emptiness. She too wondered if their marriage still had meaning. She too had resigned herself to living in routine, but she had always hoped, somewhere deep inside, that something would change someday. That evening, for the first time in years, they talked, really talked, not about logistics, not about bills, not about the kids, not about the leaky roof, about themselves, about what they had lost, about what they wanted to find again, about what they felt in this silence that had lasted too long. The conversation lasted until midnight, and in the end, they prayed together, hand in hand. For the first time since their wedding day, Padre Pio followed this couple for months. The road wasn't easy. There were relapses, evenings when the silence returned like an old habit, moments when indifference regained its hold. But each time, Michael remembered Padre Pio's words. Love is a decision, not a feeling. And he decided to love again, consciously, deliberately, even when he didn't feel like it. But Michael wasn't alone. Padre Pio saw this same pattern repeating itself constantly in the confessional. Dozens, hundreds of couples from all over Italy, from all over Europe, with the same invisible problem. Love had disappeared. Habit had taken its place, and no one thought it was a spiritual problem. No one thought it was a sin. There was Lisa, a 45-year-old woman, mother of 4, who lived in a suburb outside of Chicago. Her husband David worked construction all day. He left before dawn and came home after sunset. He ate the meal she had prepared in silence, stared at the TV, and went to bed. Not a word, not a gesture, not a glance, every day, for 15 years. Lisa had come to believe that it was normal, that all marriages ended like this, that love was a luxury reserved for the rich and the young. When she came to see Padre Pio, it wasn't even to talk about her marriage. It was for a health problem, chronic chest pains that doctors couldn't explain. But Padre Pio immediately saw something else, something the doctors couldn't see with their instruments. My daughter, your illness isn't in your body. It's in your heart. You have a heart that is dying of thirst for love. And that thirst, unquenched for so many years, is making your body sick. Your body is crying out what your mouth doesn't dare to say. Tell me, when did your husband last hold your hand? Lisa burst into tears, violent sobs that seemed to come from far away, from very deep inside. She realized she didn't even remember. Maybe 10 years, maybe 15. maybe since the birth of their youngest child. Her husband's hand hadn't touched hers with tenderness for so long that she had forgotten the sensation. Padre Pio explained something profound about marriage that few priests dare to say. Something so true that it hurts to hear. The sacred bond of marriage isn't just a legal contract before God. It's not a piece of paper signed at City Hall. It's a living organism, like a tree planted by God Himself. It has roots, a trunk, branches, leaves, fruit, and like any living organism, it needs to be nourished to survive. The water for this tree is real love, the daily gestures of tenderness, the kind words spoken in the morning and evening, the attentive glances that say, "I see you, you exist, you matter to me," the sacrifices made with joy and not with resentment. If you stop watering a tree, it doesn't die immediately. It survives for a while thanks to its reserves. First, it loses its leaves. Its branches dry up one after another. Its bark cracks. It still has the appearance of a tree. It's still standing, but it's dying from the inside. That's exactly what's happening in your marriage. The tree is still standing. You still live under the same roof. But it no longer has leaves, no more fruit, no more life, no more sap. And one day, at the first storm, it will fall, and everyone will be surprised. But no one should have been. And Padre Pio added something terrible, something he had learned directly from the souls in purgatory who visited him. Do you know what the greatest regret of the souls in purgatory is? It's not the great sins, it's not the spectacular betrayals, it's not the crimes or the scandals. The greatest regret, the one that makes souls suffer the most in the purifying flames, is the love they didn't give. The words of tenderness they didn't speak when they could have. The gestures of affection they withheld out of pride, out of laziness, or out of habit. The opportunities to love they let pass, thinking there would always be tomorrow. In purgatory, souls see clearly, with painful lucidity, all the love they could have given and kept to themselves. And that vision is a suffering greater than the fire, because fire purifies. But the regret of a love ungiven tears apart the souls. Lisa went home transformed by these words. That evening, she did something she hadn't done in years. During dinner, she reached across the table and touched David's hand. A simple gesture, light, almost timid. David jumped as if an electric current had passed through him. He looked at her with astonished eyes, wide open, confused. He didn't know what to do. His hands were rough, calloused, used to dirt and tools, not to gestures of tenderness. But in that look of surprise, Jennifer saw something she had forgotten. The young man she had married 30 years ago was still there, somewhere, behind the wrinkles, the fatigue, and the years of silence. That evening, they didn't have a grand conversation like Michael and Elena. Enzo wasn't a man of words. He didn't have the vocabulary to express what he felt. But they held hands in silence for long minutes. And that silence was different from all the other silences they had shared. It was a silence filled with something, a living silence, a warm silence, a silence where love began to circulate again, timidly, like a trickle of water in a riverbed long dried up. Padre Pio also had very harsh words for those who used the excuse of fatigue, work, or children to justify the death of love in their marriage. And this part of his teaching is perhaps the most important for our time. A man named Robert, a merchant from Naples, told him, "Father, I don't have time to love my wife. I work 12 hours a day to feed my family. When I come home, I'm exhausted. I no longer have the energy for anything, barely enough to eat and sleep. How do you expect me to find the time and strength for romantic gestures?" Padre Pio looked at him with an unusual severity, a severity that contrasted sharply with his usual gentleness. "You have time for everything, except for what matters most. Tell me honestly, you have time for work, even the overtime. You have time for your friends on Sundays after church. You have time for the newspaper and for conversations at the coffee shop, but you don't have time for the woman you swore to love before God and the entire church." Robert wanted to respond, but Padre Pio continued, "The devil has achieved a masterpiece with you. He has convinced you that marital love is a luxury, something you do when you have free time, when you have surplus energy, when everything else is done. But marital love is not a luxury. It is a sacred duty. It is a commandment from God. It is the very reason for your marriage. When you said "I do" before the altar, you didn't say "I do" when I have time. You didn't say "I do" when I'm not tired. You said "I do" forever. In good times and in bad, in fatigue and in energy, in poverty and in wealth, in routine and in the extraordinary, every day, without exception. Robert was shaken. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Padre Pio continued, explaining how the devil uses routine as his preferred weapon to destroy marriages. "Listen carefully to what I am about to tell you. The devil does not tempt strong couples with spectacular temptations. He doesn't send them a beautiful woman or a handsome man to seduce them. That's too obvious, too crude. No, his strategy is much more subtle and much more effective. He lulls them to sleep. He anesthetizes them with routine. He pushes them gently, progressively, insidiously into the deadly comfort of habit. And when habit has completely replaced love, he has won silently, without scandal, without anyone realizing it, without even the couple realizing it. The devil prefers a loveless marriage to a divorce. This may surprise you, but let me explain. Because a divorce is visible, it provokes a crisis. It forces people to react, to reflect, to seek help, to pray perhaps for the first time in years. A divorce is painful, but it breaks the illusion that everything is fine. But a loveless marriage is invisible. It doesn't alarm anyone. The neighbors think everything is fine. The family isn't worried. The parish priest suspects nothing. Even the spouses themselves don't see the danger. They are like frogs in a pot of water that heats up slowly. If you put a frog in boiling water, it would jump out immediately. But if you put it in cold water and heat it up gradually, it stays. It gets used to it until it's too late. But Padre Pio didn't just want to diagnose the problem. He didn't want to leave couples in despair. He wanted to give concrete remedies, simple but spiritually powerful gestures that any couple can practice to rekindle the flame of love in a marriage that seems dead. The first remedy is common prayer. Padre Pio said that a couple who prays together cannot remain indifferent to each other. It's spiritually impossible. Prayer creates a sacred space where God enters directly into the marriage. And where God enters, love follows, always, inevitably. Padre Pio recommended that couples pray the rosary together every evening, not each in their own corner, not each in their own room, together, next to each other, holding hands if possible, and alternating the decades. This simple practice has transformed hundreds of couples who came to see him at San Giovanni Rotondo. The second remedy is intentional gaze. Padre Pio said that couples stop loving each other when they stop looking at each other. Really looking at each other, not a fleeting glance, not a look distracted by the newspaper. A full gaze, attentive, intentional. He recommended that couples take a few minutes each day to look each other in the eyes in silence, without talking, without judging, without thinking about the grocery list. Just look and see in the other's eyes the face of God. For God dwells in every baptized soul. And when you look at your spouse with the eyes of faith, you see beyond the flaws, beyond the fatigue, beyond the routine, beyond the years. You see the soul that God entrusted to you on your wedding day, the soul for which you are responsible. The third remedy is daily forgiveness. Padre Pio said that many marriages die not because of great betrayals, but because of small grudges accumulated over the years. Small offenses never forgiven. Small frustrations that pile up like stones on top of each other until they form a wall between the two spouses. An invisible but impenetrable wall. He recommended that couples forgive each other every night before going to sleep, to never fall asleep with a grudge in their heart, to say these simple words every night, even when it's difficult. I forgive you for everything that hurt me today, and I ask you for forgiveness for everything that hurt you. The fourth remedy is joyful sacrifice. Padre Pio used to say that true love isn't measured by grand romantic gestures or expensive gifts, but by the small, everyday sacrifices made with joy, making coffee for your partner before you pour yourself a cup, yielding in a minor argument without holding a grudge, doing that chore the other one detests without being asked, getting up at night when the child cries, even when it's your partner's turn, truly listening when your partner speaks, even if the subject doesn't particularly interest you. These small acts of daily service are the fuel of marital love. They might seem insignificant in the eyes of the world, but they are enormous in the eyes of God. Each of these gestures nourishes the tree of marriage. The fifth remedy is gratitude expressed out loud. Padre Pio said that couples stop loving each other when they stop thanking each other, when they begin to consider each other's actions as rights, as obligations. He recommended thanking your spouse every day for something specific, not some vague, general thanks, but a precise and sincere thank you. Thank you for making this meal. It was delicious. Thank you for listening when I needed to talk. Thank you for working so hard for our family. Thank you for being there, simply for being there. These words of gratitude are like cool water poured on the thirsty roots of the tree of marriage. They keep it alive, they make it bloom again. Padre Pio also gave a solemn warning to couples who think their loveless marriage has no real consequences, who believe they can live indefinitely in indifference without it costing them anything. Each day you live together, without actively loving each other, you lose graces, precious graces, that God wanted to give you through your sacrament. The sacrament of marriage is a source of inexhaustible grace, a well that never runs dry. But that grace only flows if the channel is open, and the channel is active love. When love stops flowing, the grace stops flowing. You still have the sacrament, the well is still there, but you no longer benefit from it. It's like having a well of fresh water in your backyard and never drawing from it. You die of thirst next to an unending source. And he would add these words that made everyone who heard them tremble. On Judgment Day, God will not ask you if you were faithful in the way the world understands it. He will not only ask if you avoided physical adultery, he will ask if you loved actively, deliberately, concretely, every day of your marriage. If you chose to love, even when it was difficult, even when it was boring, even when the routine pushed you toward indifference, even when your spouse didn't deserve it, according to your human standards. Because love is not a feeling that comes and goes like the seasons. Love is a choice, the most important choice of your life, and you must renew it every morning when you wake up and every night before you go to sleep. If you are in a marriage where love has disappeared, if you recognize yourselves in Michael, in Jennifer, in Robert, or in Emily, know this: it is not too late. It is never too late, as long as you are still breathing. Padre Pio has seen couples who hadn't exchanged a tender word in 20 years rediscover love, not a teenage love, full of butterflies, a deeper love than that, more mature, more powerful, more real, a love forged in sacrifice and decision, a love that doesn't depend on emotions, but on will, a love that resembles that of God Himself, who loves us not because we deserve it, but because He has chosen to love us. But you have to start. You have to make the first gesture, the first word, the first look. Someone has to break the silence. Someone has to be brave enough to say, enough. I refuse to live in a dead marriage. I choose life. I choose love. What you have just heard, Padre Pio taught to thousands of couples during 50 years of daily confessions in San Giovanni Rotondo. Thousands of marriages saved by these simple but powerful words. Thousands of families protected by these concrete actions. And now, this teaching is in your hands. Padre Pio entrusts it to you from heaven. If this revelation has touched you, in the depths of your heart, if you feel that something must change in your marriage or in your understanding of love, click on the golden heart below this video, the super thanks. It's not a simple gesture to support this channel. It's a solemn commitment that you make before God and before Padre Pio. It's you saying, I refuse to live in a dead marriage. I choose active love. I choose to make the first gesture tonight. Each super thanks is a living prayer for your couple. Each super thanks is an act of faith in the grace that God has placed in your sacrament of marriage and that is waiting to be released. Padre Pio continues to intercede for couples who suffer in silence, in indifference, for those who have forgotten how to love each other, for those who believe it is too late. Nothing is too late with God. No marriage is too dead for God not to be able to resurrect it, for He who resurrected Lazarus after 4 days in the tomb can certainly resurrect a love that seems dead for years. Now lay sin in the comments. Write how long it has been since you said, I love you to your spouse. Be honest with yourself and also write what you are going to do tonight to start changing things. A gesture, a word, a look. Write it here as a public commitment before this community of faith, and write love. If you want Padre Pio to intercede especially for your couple tonight, may Padre Pio grant to every couple who listens to these words the grace to rediscover true love. May the Virgin Mary, who lived the most beautiful and holiest marriage in history with Saint Joseph, intercede powerfully for your homes. May the Sacred Heart of Jesus burn in every house where love has gone out and rekindle it with an eternal flame that nothing and no one will ever be able to extinguish. Tonight, look at your spouse, really, as on the first day, and make the choice to love, for love is always a choice. And that choice, renewed every day, can change everything. May the peace of God abide in your marriage. May the grace of the sacrament flow again, like a river, and may Padre Pio watch over your couple, now and forever. Amen.